Hello and welcome to Alaska's Political Pipeline. I'm political reporter Wil Courtney. Today, we don't have a guest on the show today, but I do want to take some time to talk about what we saw on the weekend and how it relates to our congressional delegation, especially as we're looking into the week ahead. That weekend obviously highlighted by Friday, the late hours of Friday, where the president of Venezuela was arrested by the United States on federal drug trafficking charges on Monday. As of recording, both he and his wife, whose wife was also arrested by the United States, they are pleading not guilty to their federal drug trafficking charges. Now, from that, the strikes against Venezuela in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, where this strike and arrest ultimately took place, 40, according to the New York Times, citing an anonymous Venezuelan official, 40 left dead following those strikes. Now there's questions on the legality of that, of the strike, of the arrest, and that's what we're going to expect to see going forward this week in Congress. Now, we want to make sure that we could reach out to the congressional delegation. Ever since Friday, as soon as we heard about those reports, we've been making requests to all members of the delegation. That's Senator Lisa Murkowski, Senator Dan Sullivan, and Representative Nick Begich. We've gotten statements. We really tried to make sure we could get an interview asking questions of whether they think the actions are legal when they were notified of the strikes, of the arrest. We have not been able to secure a time. We're still working to get those. Hopefully we'll be able to get them later this week, and if we do, they will of course be on this podcast. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that we can document what we currently know. What is actually somewhat of interest is on Friday, just hours before the strike ended up taking place, before the arrest took place in Venezuela, we actually did get the chance to speak with Senator Dan Sullivan and Representative Nick Begich. They were at an event for the Valley Unity Rally. They were not in their official Senate and representative capacity. They were in their campaign capacity. So they were not necessarily speaking on the duties of office, rather on their campaign. But they got the chance to chat a little bit about what unity means in the upcoming 2026 election. Nothing related to what we're ultimately talking about now. This arrest of Venezuela's president, and ultimately what's going forward with that. Now, I did get the chance to speak to a Begich spokeswoman, Silver Prout, and she said in a statement that he didn't receive any official notice because he does not sit on any committees that would have required an advance notification. That is kind of significant. According to national reporting from our national partners, a lot of lawmakers have not been notified until after the strikes actually ended up taking place. That's something that's now being scrutinized in Congress, likely to see during the rest of the week. So again, not able to get any official interviews for the show this week, but I think it is rather important to see what lawmakers are saying, and that includes actually Governor Dunleavy. We have statements. We don't have any official back and forth necessarily. I do have some, which I'll make sure to include as we get it, but across the board, what we're seeing from the congressional delegation and from the governor of Alaska is support for Maduro's capture. There is a little bit of scrutiny, and we'll get into it on how that was ultimately done. So let's go one by one into what I think are some of the most significant parts of these statements. From Senator Dan Sullivan, I commend President Trump and especially our brave military troops and intel and law enforcement officials who conducted this immensely complex operation with professionalism, precision, courage, and remarkable skill. No other military force in the world could conduct such a bold, successful operation. Maduro was an illegitimate, indicted dictator who has been leading a vicious, violent narco-terrorist enterprise in our hemisphere that was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans. He will now face American justice. From a Begich spokeswoman, that same Begich spokeswoman, Silver Prout, she says, based on information provided by the administration, Congressman Begich believes Operation Absolute Resolve, for reference, that is the operation which led to the arrest of President Nicolás Maduro, was a lawful execution of a valid U.S. arrest warrant on long-standing criminal charges against Nicolás Maduro. This was consistent with the president's constitutional authority under Article 2 to protect American national security interests and is further consistent with similar actions taken under previous administrations, including in Panama, Pakistan, and Grenada. Congress was notified of this operation on a timely basis in keeping with War Powers Resolution of 1973. From Governor Mike Dunleavy, he says on social media, all these statements coming from social media, I support the decisive action by President Trump to bring Nicolás Maduro into custody based on credible U.S. federal charges that he led a corrupt regime implicating in facilitating large-scale cocaine trafficking to the United States. Federal prosecutors are alleging Maduro and key associates conspired in narco-terrorism and cocaine importation that helped flood American communities with illegal drugs, enriching criminal networks while undermining public safety. Bringing him before U.S. courts to face these serious charges upholds the rule of law and protects families from the harms of the drug trade. We're going to go over now to Senator Lisa Murkowski. She has quite a different statement, and while I did take bits and excerpts of most of the other statements, I do have hers in full because it is quite a tone shift from what we're seeing from the rest of the delegation. She says, late last year, I voted to proceed to debate on 2 resolutions that would have terminated the escalation of U.S. military operations against Venezuela, absent explicit authorization from Congress. I took these votes because I believe the administration failed to provide Congress with the information necessary to fully evaluate the legal basis for these escalating actions. That was true then and remains true today. It is also true that Nicolás Maduro is a dictator who has ruthlessly oppressed the people of Venezuela for more than a decade with a regime. It is also true that Nicolás Maduro is a dictator who has ruthlessly oppressed the people of Venezuela for more than a decade with a regime marked by election manipulation and the detention of political opponents. The United States does not recognize Maduro as the legitimate leader of Venezuela, and there has been a warrant out for his arrest for drug-related crimes in the United States since 2020. While I'm hopeful that this morning's actions have made the world a safer place, the manner in which the United States conducts military operations, as well as the authority under which these operations take place, is important. When the Senate returns to Washington next week, that is now this week, Congress has been informed that we will receive additional briefings from the administration on the scope, objectives, and legal basis for these operations. And that's how we got to this moment, what lawmakers, what our congressional delegation has been saying up to this moment where we're now on Monday. What can we expect going into this week? It's a big question with a lot of unknowns, frankly, but some potential big movement in D.C. And that's because lawmakers and all the lawmakers that I've been trying to talk to, the congressional delegation traveling back to the Capitol, because tomorrow, Tuesday, is when Congress reconvenes, that both the Senate and the House will reconvene tomorrow. And there's a lot of big objectives on the table, not only just with Venezuela. You obviously have that big looming cliff of healthcare and those ACA enhanced premium tax credits that already have expired. Senator Murkowski is saying that there is a potential of some leeway until January 15th, but January 15th just around the horizon too. As we're recording, that's only 10 days, less than a week. But going back to Venezuela, there's a lot of big conversations about the legality. Again, why we're asking that question to our lawmakers, what do they believe? Do they believe that the actions of the U.S. are legal? Again, the only answer that we've gotten from Representative Nick Begich. Now, all lawmakers are expecting and hopeful to receive briefings from the administration on the legality of these actions, and this could happen as soon as this week. We heard in both Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski's statements that they do expect briefings, and then we've been hearing from different national partners that there are a potential for briefings as early as this week. We do know for a fact, however, that tomorrow, House lawmakers, this is Tuesday, tomorrow, House lawmakers will be at House Republican lawmakers will be at the Kennedy Center to hear from the president, and that was confirmed to me from the Begich spokesperson. Again, that's Silver Prout. Begich will be in attendance at the Kennedy Center for that meeting. We don't know what they're going to be talking about. This, again, there's a lot on the table in Congress right now. Likely, it's pretty safe to bet that Venezuela will be a topic of conversation, but is there other conversations going to be had at that meeting? We still don't quite have an idea. But in the chambers, on the floor, we do expect some legislation to be brought up just on this topic. Senator Chuck Schumer is saying that there is going to be a war powers measure that is drafted by a Virginia Democrat, Senator Tim Kaine, that will be brought to the floor, that will be voted on. And it has quite interesting ramifications considering the news that we've been seeing over the weekend, specifically on the arrest and the strikes against Venezuela, not just from that Friday arrest, but also what we've been seeing with these boat strikes and obviously very disputed boat strikes against Venezuela and alleged drug trafficking from that country. So the war powers measure drafted by Senator Tim Kaine that will be voted on, according to both Kaine and Schumer, requires congressional approval to be engaged in hostilities within or against Venezuela. It's also going to direct the president to terminate the use of armed forces against Venezuela unless there's explicit authorization by declaration of war or specific authorization for use of military force. Now, This could be sent to the courts, to the Supreme Court, if passed. We'll have to see what really happens if it's passed. Again, this is from a Democrat, right? They control neither chamber right now, so they'll need 100%, they will need Republicans to come to the table to pass any sort of resolution. We'll have to see if there's an appetite for that right now. Why it's certainly interesting to see where Senator Murkowski is leaning with her statement, neither saying this is great nor this is good, neither great nor bad. We're still working to get a better idea on what Murkowski, again, believes is the legal course that we're seeing in Venezuela, whether the actions were legal, likely a decision to be determined by those briefings that we can expect maybe this week. But again, expected to be voted on. That's according to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Tim Kaine. And if that does get passed, that could mean significant things for the administration, especially, even with the bigger picture, looking to this midterm elections. That's less than a year away now. So we're, again, working to get congressional delegation reaction as the story develops. Again, likely to develop this week. And we're working to see if we can get anybody to come and get the chance to talk about what they're seeing out of Venezuela and what it means for Alaska as well. That's the latest edition of Alaska's Political Pipeline. If you like what you listen to, consider rating our podcast and giving us a follow. We'll be back in your feeds next Monday, but until then, please take care.